And it is, of course, fitting to revisit the garden's history from its optimistic and ambitious beginnings through its challenging days to today, its 75th birthday celebration. Lel Somogyi is well known in the Hungarian community, as has been involved in many of its organizations, including the Magyar Társaság, or Hungarian Association. He has been involved in the Hungarian Cultural Garden, not only by taking on the task of being its webmaster for the garden's online presence, but he has been the garden's official historian. To give us a brief history of the Hungarian Cultural Garden, please welcome Lel Somogyi.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, friends and guests, kedves magyar testvéreim. What a varied past this beautiful garden had. It went from being an exquisite garden gem into, unfortunately, stagnation and utter neglect, finally to be reborn again just a few years ago. It is now part of our Hungarian history and our revitalized future. It was a sparkling star just for a few brief months in 1938 on that day of July 10th. The 1940s, it was quickly forgotten due to the war because Hungary was on the side of the enemy. In the 1950s, it was already run down and neglected, even before I was born in 1954, actually on this day. Then came the 1960s. Unfortunately, riots and a huge change in society. And from the 1970s to 2000, the garden was a no-man's land, mostly forgotten and no longer of interest to the Hungarian community. The future plans were never realized. There were a lot of future plans for the adornment of the garden with bus. There's 11 pedestals up there on the upper level that never came to be. Petőfi, Arany, Jókai, Bolyai, Semmelweis, Munkácsi, and Bartók were to be honored. But here we are in the 21st century, and now there's a rebirth and a reawakening that started in the 2000s, spurred on by the actions of the Hungarian Cultural Federation. It is here because a few people, like Ernie Mihai, kept the garden alive and spent his own time and money on it, as he's still doing. He continued the tradition of the keeper of the garden's memory, Lily Volosyn. Today, we dedicate a new chapter in the history of the garden and revitalize our lower garden area with this legacy wall. Look around you, and what do you see? A garden that's formal and reflecting the culture and architecture of Budapest in the early part of the 20th century. If you have been on the Buda side, all of this reminds you of what you see there. The focal point of this garden is the pool and the fountain leading to a terrace, not unlike that of the castle on Buda Hill. It reflects formality, as in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. What makes this garden Hungarian? Well, taken together, all of its elements, and the bit of Hungarian soil that's buried somewhere on these grounds. For decades, the brand of this garden was truly the wrought iron gateway, designed in the tradition of the Austro-Hungarian estates. Donated by what is now known as William Penn, the Várhovai kapu, or gate, is not strictly a székely kapu, though we still tend to call it that. It was constructed with donations from the American-Hungarian community. Original drawings show that a székely kapu was planned, but the decision was made back then to be politically correct and focus on more modern elements. Today, in the lower garden, we dedicate this legacy wall, a tribute to both the past and a monument to the future, encompassing the enduring elements of style and simplicity. What was the reason for the garden? Well, the pursuit of peace, actually. These gardens started after World War I, that great war in a time when the world hoped for peace after it. The first gardens were Hebrew and German, built in 1926. Progress continued very slowly, then stopped because of the Great Depression in 1929. Who were the people behind the garden? Well, a committee, of course. Who else? There were judges and politicians, professors and executives and organizational leaders, many of whom were not born in Hungary but were American-born already. There were 32 community and Hungarian organizations representing the Hungarian colony. There were 15,000 who attended the 1938 ceremony, according to Szabadság newspaper headlines. Today, we represent the same kind of cross-section as they did back in 1938. We are the Öreg-Amerikás, the old American Hungarians, today. This is the Garden of Culture and the Garden of Peace, dedicated to Franz Liszt and to art and culture, the things that define us. Very few things took place after the 1938 dedication. A flagpole in 1941, a couple of busts in the 1950s, and then nothing until a band of dedicated people got together to start up the garden again on May 1st, 2007. And what a startup it was. The message is clear for the future. There are still Hungarians who care about their heritage here in Cleveland. They care about the message of peace and the Hungarian spirit of 1956. They reflect our dedication and commitment to freedom and proclaim the astounding accomplishments of Hungarian culture and the amazing contributions of Hungarians in every country to the advancement of universal humanity. These are truly, vitally important messages. We are part of a new global civilization and culture. Even more so than 5 years ago, we are faced with the threat of terrorism and the possible military and political resurgence of socialism, communism, and the Cold War. Let's not let it happen. The message of a garden of peace is truly vital to us today. Let's carry it forward into the future.